bookworms, I'm Becca. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I am doing something a little bit different, and instead of recommending my favorite Christmassy books or winter books, I am recommending my favorite horror books. I'm calling this like Nightmare Before Christmas recommendations. I really wanted to do a couple videos about books that get me in the holiday spirit, but as I started looking at my books, I realized that I don't have any Christmassy books because I don't like those kinds of stories. But what I do like is being terrified. So I have 4 books to share with you that are kind of my Nightmare Before Christmas favorite scary books to read. Starting off, of course, with The Merciless by Danielle Vega. I cannot do a scary book recommendations video without talking about The Merciless. The Merciless and the Merciless series, and pretty much any book that Danielle Vega writes, are my favorite books of all time, or pretty close to them. And I know that I talk about these books all the time, so if you have not read them, what are you doing? Anyway, The Merciless follows a girl named Sophia that moves around a lot because her mother is in the military, and so they just moved to a new town, and she starts at a new school and pretty quickly becomes friends with the popular friend group at the school. And the thing about these girls is that they are super religious, but they also think that one of the other girls at school is possessed by the devil. And so they invite Sophia over to have a sleepover, but when she gets there, she finds out that what they have planned for the night is a lot more sinister than she could have anticipated. They plan to kidnap the other girl and perform an exorcism on her. But things start to go very wrong. I promise you that this book will have you on the edge of your seat. There were a few times that I had to take a break from reading this book because it was getting so intense, and I loved every second of it. I pretty much devoured the entire series. This is one of the few series that I actually kept up on when the books were being released, which is not something that I typically do. So I highly recommend it, and it is also one of my comfort reads. I usually go back to it every fall to do a reread around Halloween, and I am way past due for a reread of this book in the series. My second pick is another book that I talk about all the time, and it is, of course, Sadie by Courtney Summers. This book is incredible, and the way it's written is kind of like a podcast almost. So there's some sections that are scripted out like a podcast, and on the podcast, they're telling the story of this girl, Sadie, a missing persons case. And then the other timeline that you get to see is from Sadie's perspective. So you kind of get the before and what's happening with Sadie, and then the aftermath as the story is being discussed on like a true crime podcast. It is so freaking good. I do obviously own the physical copy of the book, but if I could recommend any way to read this book, it would definitely be the audiobook. And that is because the audiobook is a full cast of characters. So in the segments where it is structured like a podcast, it literally feels like you're listening to a true crime podcast. It is the most incredible thing that I've ever listened to. It pretty much ruined other audiobooks for me because it is not every day that you get a full cast audiobook, and I just love it. I love it so much. The end still just keeps me up at night. I cannot stop thinking about it, and I need other people to experience this book so that we can scream about it together. Next, I have Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. This one isn't so much a horror book as it is a thriller, but the things that happen in this book were so horrific that I'm just gonna include it in this video. I don't think that it's one that I could ever go back and reread. I'm just saying that right now. If you are a teacher or a parent, you're going to have a very, very difficult time reading this book. I'm just saying that right now. So, like I suggest with any book, make sure that you are going and researching any trigger warnings before reading, especially with this one because it is so intense. In this book, we follow a girl whose best friend has gone missing, and nobody noticed that she was gone except for the narrator in the book, and it seemed like nobody really cared until she was found a year later, and now it's kind of talking about the aftermath of that. But as the book goes on, you realize that something just isn't right, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. It's one of those books that just keeps getting darker and darker, and you don't want it to be true once you start putting the pieces together, but it is true. But then you're just so invested you can't stop reading. In the end, absolutely rips you to shreds. I don't cry very often when I'm reading books, and when I do, it's just like a few tears here and there. This book had me bawling, screaming, like truly sick to my stomach. I did not know if I would be able to finish this book. And part of me wishes that I hadn't. Because once it gets to a certain part, and you just know in your heart of hearts that it's going there, it somehow gets even worse. So, read at your own risk, I guess. It's weird to talk about this book in terms of enjoyment. I did not enjoy this story, but it made me feel something. And I feel like I rated it pretty high because it's a well-written book, but I don't know how to talk about it in terms of enjoyment because there's not very many books that I will never be picking up again, but this is one of them, truly. It is so intense. It is so intense. And the last book that I want to talk about is The Mary Shelley Club by Goldie Moldavsky. This is about a girl who has a really traumatic incident happen to her. And so she moves schools, like they move and she moves schools. And she becomes friends with this group of students that is known as the Mary Shelley Club. And they prank other students by using like urban legends and classic horror movies. But when someone dies for real, things start to take a turn, and it is so freaking good. It will keep you guessing until the last page. I think there's gonna be a second book, which I don't even know how to talk about. I loved this book so much. I loved it. It is so freaking good. If you are a fan of horror movies, then you will really enjoy this book because it's just like a love letter to classic horror movies. It's so good. If you've not read The Mary Shelley Club, this one needs to be at the top of your list. And there you guys go. That is my Nightmare Before Christmas recommendations. Let me know what books you enjoy reading that are not necessarily Christmassy related. It doesn't have to be horror books, but books that aren't typically read during this Christmassy holiday season. Drop them in the comments below. I cannot believe that it is already going to be Christmas this week. That is wild to me. I already got my journal for next year to do my reading journal. So if you would like some content of me maybe flipping through my journal that I was using last year and talking about my process with that a little bit, as well as setting up my journal for this year, let me know that down in the comments as well. If you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button down below to see more videos. That's all I got for you today, and I will see you next time. Bye!